Now, Marwan ibn al-Hakam, he dies in the year 71, year 71 after Hijrah, and his son Abdul Malik ibn Marwan takes over. Abdul Malik ibn Marwan was a brilliant, leader, and so Abdul Malik ibn Marwan manages to, basically what happens is that he manages to conquer Egypt, and then he manages to bring Iraq back under him. And so once he manages to bring Iraq under him, and he manages to bring Egypt under him, he basically has a Sham now, Egypt, Iraq. He surrounded the people within the land of Al-Haramain. Okay? He manages to capture Medina. So now Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu ta'ala anhu is the only one left in Mecca now. And his khilafah has dwindled very quickly. Alright? And the reason being, subhanAllah, if you really want to look at it, was that his honesty. He didn't employ unethical tactics and things of that sort, right? So, and he established his base in Mecca, and people voluntarily were giving him bay'ah all over the world. But he didn't go there and try to enforce a stable government in all of these different lands. So it was very easy for Abdul Malik ibn Marwan to take those places away from him, Iraq and Egypt away from him. Now, Abdul Malik ibn Marwan knows that it is very, very difficult now to bring Mecca. So Abdul Malik ibn Marwan just kind of is giving up on Mecca. Mecca is just going to be Abdullah ibn Zubayr's thing until he passes away. But there is a man now that volunteers himself to take an army to Mecca, and that is the man Al-Hajjaj al-Thaqafi. Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi. Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi, the one who killed Ibn Omar radiallahu anhu that we mentioned. This is the man who Omar ibn Abdul Aziz rahimahullah said that if all of the tyrants of history were to be put on one side against Al-Hajjaj's tyranny outweighs all of them. And if all of the sayyi'at of Al-Hajjaj were to be placed on one side of a scale and all of the sayyi'at of mankind, Al-Hajjaj's sayyi'at outweigh all of them. Now there's no doubt, when you read the history of Al-Hajjaj, there's no doubt that he stabilized things, but at what expense? By killing companions, by killing Muslims. He brought people under one banner, but in a very, very cruel, unethical, tyrannical manner. Okay? Kills the Sahaba. Anyone that disagrees, he will kill them. Al-Hajjaj was unknown. He wants to make a name for himself in this year. So he goes to Mecca now to fight Ibn Zubayr. What he does is, he goes through Al-Iraq first, and he goes to Egypt, and he just amasses this huge army from Sham, from Egypt, from Iraq. Al-Hajjaj also has something else. He's from Ta'if. He's actually originally from Ta'if. Thaqif, Banu Thaqif is from Ta'if, so he's from Ta'if. So he has that advantage as well. So he goes to Ta'if, and Ta'if is right next to Mecca. And he gets the people of Ta'if to secretly join him, and then he places Mecca under siege. Now when Al-Hajjaj places Mecca under siege, and this took place in the time of Hajj, Dhul Hijjah, in the year 72 after Hijrah. Alright, he places Mecca under siege, and he actually takes control of Arafah during Hajj. And so again, more confusion. Ibn Zubayr had the rest of Mecca, Hajjaj had Arafah. Neither one of them was allowing the other to go. Ibn Zubayr was not going to let Hajjaj come do Hajj over there. And Hajjaj was not going to let Ibn Zubayr go to Arafah. So the people basically had to figure it out. There wasn't really an Amir in Hajj that year. And so it's just absolute chaos. And Al-Hajjaj, what he does now to the people of Mecca is one of the most cruel things in the world. He puts the catapults back, and so he's firing stones at them once again. But the thing about Hajjaj is that he says he's going to be patient. He stops all food and drink from going to Mecca. So he starves off Mecca now for 5 months. 5 months and 17 days he lays Mecca under siege. During that time, just non-stop, relentless firing upon Mecca over and over and over again. He strikes the Kaaba once again. And subhanAllah, the way that he strikes the Kaaba, he actually demolished the Kaaba. He actually ruined it. Alright, and it had to be rebuilt once again. And when he did that, it's amazing, because when he did that, his army stopped. They were like, wait a minute, we hit the Kaaba. And Al-Hajjaj says, it's okay, you didn't do it on purpose. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Your actions are by intentions, you didn't do it on purpose. That night, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala struck those catapults with lightning, and they exploded, and they killed all of the men that were using the catapults. So what did that do? The rest of the army of Hajjaj now was afraid. And he manages to convince them. He says, look, I'm from Ta'if. And lightning strikes in this area all the time. All of you people are from Asham, from Iraq. I used to live in this place. I grew up in this place. Lightning used to strike us all the time. And he even starts to employ religious nonsense. So he starts to say it's maybe a sign of Allah's acceptance of you, that He took you as shuhada in Bilad al-Haramain. I mean, he really tries to fool his people, and he tries to instill this sense of confidence in them that you're okay. So they keep going, and they keep on attacking Mecca. Eventually what happens is that Abdullah ibn Zubayr, he had with him 10,000 men. But one by one, they were dying off. They were surviving on Zamzam. They had no food. Okay, so the women and the children were dying as well because of the siege, the starvation, and so on and so forth. Ibn Zubayr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, his army could not, people could not, they would try to lift their swords. Every day they would fight. And they were so weak that they were holding their swords while they were walking like this. They couldn't even fight anymore. I mean, they were just completely dying off. And it got so bad that some of the children of Ibn Zubayr, Hamza and Khubayb, they actually went to Hajjaj secretly. Not to give him bay'ah. They said, if the people leave, will you give them amn? Will you give them safety? Like, will you at least let people leave? Hajjaj says, yeah, they can leave and they're safe. He just wants to conquer the land, and then he knows he's solidified everything, So he says they can leave and they're safe. And this was done again because people were dying and that type of stuff, so it was sort of a mercy for them to be able to leave because they couldn't even fight anymore. At that point now, Ibn Zubayr radiallahu ta'ala anhu is only left with a couple of hundred people, and then they're dying off. Ibn Zubayr is 73 years old. 73 years after Hijrah. He's not a young man anymore. He's an old man, subhanAllah. And he's the Khalifa. He is the rightful Khalifa at that time. But subhanAllah, he's all alone in Mecca. And he's fighting all by himself. And subhanAllah, one of the things that was said about Ibn Zubayr, that by himself he could fight 1,000 men. And subhanAllah, he proved it. Because every single day he'd get back up and he'd fight and he'd fight and he'd fight, and they wouldn't be able to harm him. They wouldn't be able to get him. Now when that takes place, this is where we have, one of, subhanAllah, the most emotional and beautiful conversations that shows you, the iman of these people between him and his mother, Asma bint Abi Bakr radiallahu anha. Asma is alive. Asma radiallahu ta'ala anha is over 100 years old. She's almost blind. She's not blind completely, but she's almost completely blind. Very old, not able to do much. She's just doing ibadah, and she's also struggling because she's not eating or drinking. She's just having zamzam. So Abdullah ibn Zubayr, he goes to visit his mother with Urwa ibn Zubayr. And alhamdulillah, Urwa was there to narrate to us this conversation. Subhanallah. If there's one narration that he gave us as a favor to us, is that he was there to narrate this beautiful exchange between a mother and her son. So Urwa ibn Zubayr says, دَخَلَ عَلَيْهَا وَهِيَ وَجِعَ, that Abdullah ibn Zubayr entered upon his mother while she was in pain. And he said to her, Ya Ummah, O my mother, كيف تجدينك? How are you doing? قالت وجعة. She said, I'm in pain. قال إن في الموت لعافية. Ibn Zubayr said, when we die, then we will feel afiyah, we'll feel a sense of relief and we'll be okay. قالت فلعلك تشتهي موتي يا ولدي. And then she فلا تفعل وضحكت. She said, are you trying to tell me that you're going to kill me? She's joking with him, subhanallah. She said, are you saying that you desire my death now? And she laughed with him. فضحك. And he laughed. And then she said, Wallahi ya bunayya. She said, I swear to you, O my son, لا أشتهي أن ألقى ربي. I don't wish to meet my Lord حتى تأتي على أحد طرفيك. Until one of two things happens to you. She says, ترزق الشهادة فأحتسبك عند ربي. Either you die as a martyr, and I seek the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of having put forth another son as a shaheed, as a martyr. أو ترزق النصر فتقر بك عيني. Or Allah gives you victory, and I enjoy that. The coolness of my eyes comes through that victory. And then Abdullah ibn Zubayr, قال يا أمة, he said, O my mother, خذلني الناس, the people have betrayed me. ولم يبقى معي إلا من ليس له إلا صبر ساعة. The only people that are left with me only have an hour left of patience. They're not going to be able to keep going. وقد وعدني القوم ما أريد من الدنيا فما رأيك. And the other side is offering me whatever I want of this world. They're telling me, Hajjaj is telling Abdullah ibn Zubayr, just quit and you can become one of us, and you'll become a governor, and you will be part of the government of the Umayyads. You'll just come to us. So he says, what do you think? He's asking her, Ma ra'yuki? She said, Allah, Allah, ya ibn Zubayr. She's surprised. Allah, Allah, ya ibn Zubayr. O son of Zubayr. In kunta ta'lama annaka ala haqqin tad'u ilay famdi alay. If you know that you're calling to truth, then die on that truth. فلا تمكن غلمان بني أمية من رقبتك فيلعبون بك. Don't let Bani Umayyah play with you, and then and they'll put you in these positions and they'll just use you. He says, وَإِن كُنْتَ أَرَدْتَ الدُّنْيا فَبِئْسَ الْعَبْدُ أَنْتَ. And if it's the world that you seek, then you are a wretched servant. You're a miserable servant. And she says to him, أَهْلَكْتَ نَفْسَكَ وَأَهْلَكْتَ مَنْ مَعَكَ. Then you have destroyed yourself and you've destroyed those that are with you. She says, يَا بُنَيَّ, O my son, لَضَرْبَةٌ فِي السَّيْفِ فِي الْعِزِّ أفضل من ضربة في الصوت في الذل. She says, for you to be struck by a sword in honor is far more beloved than for you to be struck by a whip in humiliation. ما سيفعلون بك. What can they possibly do to you? And she said, and Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, Ya Ummah, they're going to kill me. And she said, and aren't you going to feel sadness when they kill me? SubhanAllah, this is a 100-year-old woman, a mother, talking to her son. She says, Wallahi ya bunay, innama ahzanu ilayka law qutilta fi batil. She said, I would only feel sad for you if you're killed in falsehood, if you're killed on something other than the truth. Alhamdulillahi alladhi ja'alaka ala ma yuhibbu Allah wa ala ma uhibbuhu ana. All praises be to Allah who made you in a way that is beloved to Him and in a way that's beloved to me. And as she's saying this to him, subhanAllah, he says back to her, he says, Wallahi ya ummi hadha ra'i. He says to her, I swear, oh my mother, this is my opinion as well. He said, I just wanted to hear it from you to strengthen my determination, so I can have more confidence going forward. That's all. I didn't expect anything less from you. And this is my opinion as well. And he said, because Allah Azza wa Jal knows that I took this stance only for His sake, not to compete for this world, not for any form of falsehood. I didn't do this because I wanted to be a leader. I didn't do this for any dunya or anything of that sort. Allah knows that I did this only for His sake. So Asma radiallahu ta'ala anha, she says, اقترب مني يا بني لأتشمم رائحتك. Come close to me, my son, so I can smell you for the last time. SubhanAllah. And she hugs him. And as she hugs him, he kisses her hands, he kisses her feet, kisses her head, he grabs her tight, and she says to him, ما هذا الذي تلبسه يا بني? What is it that you're wearing under your clothes? So he said, this is my armor, and I'm wearing this to make you more comfortable. And then she says to him that ash-shuja', a brave person, won't need that. A person that's seeking shahada is not going to need that. You're going to die anyway. Meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without it. You don't need that. And she says, Ya ummi akhafu in qataluni an yumathilu bi wa yaslubuni. I'm afraid that if they kill me, they're going to make an example out of me and they're going to crucify me and things of that sort. And she says to him, and this is just the strength of this mother. This is something that's really hard to believe is coming from a mother, but she says this to him, with full confidence and tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She says, Ya bunayya inna shata la yadurruhu salhu ba'da dhabh. Said, oh my son, a sheep doesn't feel its skinning after it's slaughtered. It doesn't matter, even if they do that to you. Why do you care that they would do that to your body? Famdi ala basiratik wasta'in billah. So continue on your way and seek aid from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he goes out and he dresses himself in the kafan, basically, and he sprays that misk on himself, and he comes to his mother one more time and he says, Ya ummi la tatruki li ad-du'a hayyan wala mayyitan. Don't stop making dua for me whether I'm alive or whether I'm dead. So she said, Lam ada'u abadan. I'm not going to leave it at any time. La fi hayatik wala min ba'di mautik. Even whether you're alive or whether you're dead, I'll never stop making dua for you. And she raised her hands to the sky And she said, Allahumma arham tula hadha al-qiyam bil-layli tawil warham hadha al-nahib wal-dhama'a fil hawaji. She says, oh Allah, have mercy on him for all of the nights that he used to stand up and pray at night, all of the fasting that he used to do in the hot sun in Mecca and in Medina. And she said, Allahumma qad sallamtu fihi li amrik. Oh Allah, I have submitted him to you. Wa raditu fihi li qada'ik. And I'm satisfied with your decree for him. And she says, to give me the reward of a grateful person. Thawab al-shakirin, to grant me the reward of a grateful person. And so he comes to her one more time and he kisses her head, and the last thing that he sees from her is her raising her hands, making dua for him. And subhanAllah, as he goes out and he fights, everyone flees him. No one is with him. There's one more person that's with him, and his name is Abdullah ibn al-Muti'. The last person that would fight next to him is Abdullah ibn al-Muti'. Everyone has fled him. He's all by himself fighting an entire army. And Abdullah ibn al-Muti' is the reason why he stood fighting with him is because he was one of the people that fled from Al-Harra in Medina. And so as he's fighting, he's saying, أَنَا الَّذِي فَرَرْتُ يَوْمَ الْحَرَّةِ I'm the one that fled on the day of Harra. وَالْحُرُّ لَا يَفِرُّ إِلَّا مَرَّةً And a free person would not flee except for once. I'm not going to make the same mistake of fleeing again. So he fought until he died. And Abdullah ibn Zubayr fought them all by himself for an entire day. No one else with him. They could not kill him until the time of Maghrib came. And subhanAllah, this is something very powerful. I just want to take you now to a hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam once saw Abdullah ibn Zubayr and he said, Ahuwa huwa? Is that him? لَيَمْنَأَنَّ الْبَيْتِ وَلَيَمُوتَنَّ دُونَهُ He's going to secure the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he will die right next to it. And Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he goes at the age of 73 years old fighting all by himself. He starts to pray Salat al-Maghrib and someone strikes him in the back of his head while he's praying Salat al-Maghrib and he falls to the ground finally. And even as he fell to the ground, he reached for his sword, and as he was about to reach for his sword, they thought he was going to get up, but he raised his hand and he died right there. And they got on top of him and they massacred him, they killed him. And subhanAllah, this was what they do next to him. It just shows you, the way that these people were. They were chanting Allahu Akbar. They're chanting takbir. Think about the irony. They just killed him and they're chanting takbir. And Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu hears about this and he was on the outskirts. He comes running in and he says, I remember when they said takbir the day he was born. Subhanallah, Abu Bakr running through the streets of Medina saying takbir because he was born. And wallahi, the people that are saying takbir today are not like the people that said takbir back then. What is wrong with you people? How could you bring yourself to kill this man? And what they did was Al-Hajjaj, he mutilated the body of Abdullah ibn Zubayr and he crucified him. He put him up right next to the Kaaba so that the people could look at him and so that the people could mock him. And subhanAllah, it completely backfired on Al-Hajjaj. Why? Because there was a fragrance that was coming from the body of Abdullah ibn Zubayr that was so strong that the people started to have doubts within themselves. Al-Hajjaj, he goes and he ties a dead cat to Abdullah ibn Zubayr's body. It has a terrible stench. But then the dead cat starts smelling good as well. So it's clear, subhanAllah, that this man died in shahada, that he died a martyr. Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he passes by his body, he goes up to his body and he says, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Khubayb. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Khubayb. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Khubayb. Peace be unto you, O Abu Khubayb. He says, Ma alimtuka illa sawwaman, qawwaman, wasulan al-rahim. Ama wallahi la ummatun anta asharruha ummatu khair. It's beautiful words. He says, peace be unto you, O Ibn Zubayr, O Abu Khubayb. He says that I don't remember you except as one that used to fast all the time, that used to pray all the time, and that used to establish his ties of kinship. And he says, Wallahi, an ummah, if there's an ummah and you are the worst of that ummah, then that's the best ummah on earth. If you are the worst person in that ummah, it's the best person on earth. Meaning, you are the best person that was amongst us. And when Abdullah ibn Umar did that, Everyone else starts to come to him and say, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Khubayb, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Khubayb, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Khubayb. So what Al-Hajjaj wanted to achieve was humiliation. Instead, it's all backfiring on him. The emotions of the people are now gathering against him. And this cruel tyrant is told to bring his body down because his mother, Asma, wants to do the ghusl. She wants to wash it and get it over with. And he says, not until she comes and begs me to take his body down. And Asma radiallahu ta'ala anha, she says, that's not happening. Now, what Asma, she could barely see, so she tried to leave her house, and Abdullah ibn Umar, he came to her, and he says, إِنَّ هَذِهِ الْجُثَثْ لَيْسَتْ بِشَيْءٍ وَإِنَّ الْأَرْوَاحَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. Look, these bodies aren't anything. The souls are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't need to, he didn't want her to see Abdullah ibn Zubayr in that form. But he doesn't know Asma. Asma has a heart of gold, subhanAllah. And Asma radiallahu anha is someone that has struggled her entire life. She said, وَمَا يَمْنَعُنِي وَقَدْ أُهْدَى رَأْسَ يَحْيَى بْنَ زَكَرِيَّا إِلَى بَغِيَّ مِنْ بَغَايَ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيل. What would stop me if the head of Yahya alayhi salam was given as a gift to one of the prostitutes of Bani Israel? Why can't I see my son? I don't care. I know, what she's saying to him is, I know very well that these bodies don't mean anything. Right? If Yahya alayhi salam was beheaded and my son is killed in this way, then I know that there's a wisdom behind it, and I know that it doesn't mean anything. So she went up to his body, and Al-Hajjaj was standing there, proud. And he said to her, he asked permission. He said, you know, do you want to talk? And she said, after what you did to Amir al-Mu'mineen, after what you did to the commander of the believers, Hajjaj said, you mean al-Munafiq, the hypocrite? And she responds to Hajjaj and she says to him, listen, you might have ruined his dunya, but he's ruined your akhirah. خَرَّبْتُ لَهُ الدُّنْيَا وَخَرَّبَ لَكَ الْآخِرَةِ. Go ahead and gloat. You've ruined his dunya, but he's ruined your akhirah. And she goes to his body and she hugs his body, subhanAllah, what's left of it. And she says, أما لهذا الفارس أن يترجل أما الآن لهذا الفارس أن يترجل أما الآن لهذا الفارس أن ينزل. Isn't it time for this knight to come down? Isn't it time for this warrior, this brave warrior to be brought down? And as she says that, Hajjaj felt so little, and his own people looked at Hajjaj like disgusted with him. So finally, the body of Abdullah ibn Zubayr was brought down, and Asma radiallahu anha herself, she did the ghusl of his body, and he was buried. And Asma radiallahu ta'ala anha, 2 weeks later, died in her salah in Mecca. Subhanallah. And she was buried next to Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And that was in the year 63 after Hijrah. And just to kind of recap now, when everyone died, everyone 73, every one of the Abadila, Ibn Abbas, Ibn Amr, Ibn Zubayr, and Ibn Umar, the last of them, died in Hajj that year. All of them died in the year 73 after Hijrah. So subhanAllah, this world lost all 4 of those great men in 1 year. And when Abdullah ibn Umar passed away, he was the last of the Sahaba that was there, and he was the best of the people on the face of this earth. And Urwa ibn Zubayr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he mentioned the sword of Az-Zubayr was the sword that Abdullah was using. So subhanAllah, the sword even that he was using, he recognized it. And Urwa radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he recognized that sword, he took it and he hid it, and that sword is still preserved today. The sword of Az-Zubayr that Zubayr used to fight with, and the one that Abdullah took over and used to fight with, it's still preserved today. And subhanAllah, the legacy of Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu ta'ala anhu is not so much in his courage, is not so much in his hadith narration, as much as it is in his courage, in his bravery, in his standing up to dhulm, setting a trend of not letting tyrants run the ummah the way that they feel like running the ummah. And this was something even his son Khubayb carried on, fighting that tyranny and so on and so forth. As far as hadith narrations are concerned, there are only a couple of hundred from Abdullah ibn Zubayr, not many at all. As far as his effect on fiqh, it's not much at all. But he falls into as being one of the Abadila because of that night, of that stance that he took for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the Khalifa, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And what we take from that conversation between him and his mother, I've had to read that conversation probably 20 times in my life and teach it. And subhanAllah, it doesn't get any easier to read that conversation. But it also shows you that these people had a different perspective on life altogether. Right? They were so connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that even when tragedy in that worst form came to them, they didn't see it as tragedy. They didn't view it as tragedy. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy upon him, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy upon his family, on Asma radiallahu ta'ala anha, on Zubayr radiallahu anhu, on the entire family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Sahaba, the best generation. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be pleased with them, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us for our shortcomings, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from all forms of al-fitan. Allahumma ameen. Questions? I went way over time. I'm very sorry, but you guys couldn't expect me to stop that.